Okay, so it has been 4 years since The Last Jedi came out, and people are still talking about this movie. And heck, I'm still talking about this movie. Like this movie still makes me angry to this day. So, but I thought, what the heck? I might as well give my thoughts on this film, just because it seems to be just as talked about today as it was 2 or 3 years ago. I did not like this movie at all. I rank this movie as the most disappointing film of all time for me. Now, for me, that title was originally held by The Dark Knight Rises. I was so disappointed in that film, and I was actually referring to this movie as The Last Jedi Rises for a long time because because that movie scarred me so badly. But yeah, I definitely think The Last Jedi takes the cake. It narrowly inches out The Dark Knight Rises for being the biggest letdown of all time for me. And it's such a shame because there's clearly a lot of talent behind this film. I mean, in The Force Awakens, I loved Daisy Ridley and John Boyega and Oscar Isaac. And from what I have seen, Rian Johnson seems to be a very talented filmmaker. I loved Knives Out, and I thought Looper was pretty entertaining too. But I just think the decisions he made for The Last Jedi were just horrible. And no, I don't hate this movie because I'm a member of the alt-right. Yeah, I'm a libertarian, so by definition, I cannot be a member of the alt-right. So if you find yourself, I don't know, throwing that term around every time you get on the internet, chances are you have no idea what you're talking about. But yeah, I digress. So let's start with what I liked about this movie. First, this movie is beautifully shot, and the special effects and the practical effects are top-notch. Rian Johnson is clearly capable of making a good-looking, big-budget sci-fi blockbuster. This movie has a lot of practical effects, and I absolutely love that. I did not like how much CG was used in the Star Wars prequels, and I think the decision to rely heavily on practical effects is one of the few redeeming qualities of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. So yeah, the movie looks really good. Unfortunately, that's where my positive opinions of this movie end. I thought The Force Awakens was okay when I first saw it, I don't know, it made me excited for the future of Star Wars. I mean, it had a lot of problems, but it was refreshing to see a Star Wars film where the characters actually had chemistry with each other, like the budding friendship between Finn and Poe. I remember seeing a meme where someone was like, J.J. Abrams was able to accomplish better character development in 2 minutes of dialogue between Finn and Poe, Finn and Poe than the entire prequel trilogy, and I absolutely agree with that. A lot of people look back on the prequel trilogy with rose-colored glasses, rose-tinted glasses. I don't know what the phrase is, but yeah, just because the sequel trilogy is terrible doesn't mean that the prequel trilogy is suddenly good. Yeah, I find Attack of the Clones, for instance, to be completely unwatchable. So yeah, it was refreshing to see characters have chemistry, and it was good to see actors that are actually acting instead of just reading off a teleprompter like it seemed like they were doing in the prequel trilogy. So yeah, again, even though I had major problems with The Force Awakens, the most egregious being that oh my gosh, they fought a third Death Star. That is just unforgivable. I will never forgive J.J. Abrams for making that creative decision. But at the end of the day, I was excited to see a Star Wars sequel after I saw The Force Awakens. But man, when I got out of seeing The Last Jedi in the theater, my excitement for Star Wars was just over. I did not want to see a third movie, and I just thought the franchise was dead. So here are my problems with this movie that have absolutely nothing to do with complaining about identity politics or feminism or racial representation or anything like that. I just flat out did not enjoy this movie for the following basic reasons. First, I thought the humor in this movie was just abysmal. The humor from this film felt it was built on like rejected jokes from a Joss Whedon or Taika Waititi Marvel film or something like that. The humor just did not seem to fit within the Star Wars universe. And sure, there's a lot of potty humor in the prequel films thanks to Jar Jar Binks and some slapstick comedy with the Ewoks and Return of the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi. But this movie just takes the cringe to a whole nother level. The film starts off with Poe making a crank call to General Hux where he's like, I'm holding to talk with General Hux. And General Hux is like, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? And like, there's silence for a few seconds. He's like, I'm holding for General Hux. He's like, yes, can we get through to him? Ugh. And so he goes on pretending like he can't hear General Hux. And then he says, I have a message for General Hux. It's about his mother. I was like, oh my goodness. Did he just make a yo mama joke after making a crank call in a Star Wars film? I was sitting there in the theater and I was just thinking, what is going on here? And unfortunately, that just kind of set the tone for the whole movie. And oh man, I don't know. If you thought that was funny, more power to you. I just respectfully disagree. The movie had a lot of bad jokes, but for the sake of brevity, I'm just gonna leave it with that one. Secondly, I thought the storyline was just boring. I mean, the storyline is that the Resistance ships are slowly flying away from the First Order in a straight line in empty space, while the First Order waits for them to run out of gas, essentially. For me, that was just excruciating to watch. I mean, the Empire Strikes Back is a similar storyline where the Millennium Falcon is being stalked by Star Destroyers, and they're doing everything they can to get away without having hyperdrive capabilities. But at least there was interesting stuff going on. I mean, they go into an elaborate action set piece with the asteroid field. They get eaten by a space slug, and they do a frontal assault on the Star Destroyers and trick them by hiding on their hull. And then they get followed by Boba Fett, and they go to Cloud City and get betrayed. And there was a lot of stuff going on. I don't know who in the writer's room was like, hey, you know what would be sweet? Let's have three ships chasing three other ships in a straight line in empty space with nothing else going on. You can't tell how fast the ships are going because there's no frame of reference because it's just utter darkness. And let's just do that for 2.5 hours. That was a poor creative decision. Thirdly, the plot holes in this movie are just unforgivable. And sure, every movie in the world has plot holes, and you can nitpick any movie to death, but not all plot holes are built the same. The worst plot hole for me was the Canto Bight storyline. Essentially what happens is Finn, Rose, and Poe realize that the First Order has a special tracking device that allows them to follow the Resistance ships even when they enter into light speed. So in order to get away from the First Order, they need to sneak aboard the First Order flagship and disable the tracking device. And then they can only do that if they have the ability to hack into the First Order shield codes and disable the shields so they can board. So they decide to contact Maz Kanata over hologram radio or whatever, and she tells them that out of the tens of thousands of people that she has met over her 900 years of existence, she knows of only one man in the entire galaxy who is able to hack First Order security codes. So Finn and Rose travel millions or billions of miles across the galaxy to go to this one planet, the casino planet Canto Bight, to find the one man who can hack the codes. And just when they are about to approach this man, they get arrested for a parking violation, and that was just like another sad attempt at humor in this film. And so they get put into a jail cell, and guess what happens? They happen to have a mysterious cellmate played by a stuttering Benicio del Toro. And it just so happens that there are actually two men in the entire galaxy who are capable of hacking First Order security codes. And it just so happens that this second man also is on Canto Bight, and he just so happens to have been arrested a few moments before Rose and Finn, and happened to be put in the exact same cell that they were put into. Not only that, but he is capable of breaking himself out of that cell anytime he wants. He just happened to be waiting to break out just in case some resistance fighters happen to get locked up at the same time and need his help. Just, for me, this plot hole is just unforgivable. This should not have happened. And the movie has many other glaring potholes. The movie has other glaring plot holes, but this one is just, is the worst of all. Yeah, it's a pothole, all right. Now, fourth, I absolutely hated what they did to Luke Skywalker. I would have been fine with them portraying Luke Skywalker as a hermit who lost hope, just as long as he was able to have a satisfying redemption arc. But unfortunately, his redemption arc is kind of pathetic. I mean, we've been waiting 30 years to see Luke Skywalker again, and his grand final act that we have been waiting 30 years to see is to project his image across the galaxy to distract Kylo Ren. So he essentially projects an image of himself like a little cowardly punk. Instead of going there himself, instead of going to the planet where his sister is and trying to lend a hand and kick some butt in the process, he decides to stay on his little rock in the middle of the ocean and watch from the sidelines and just kind of give slight little distraction to give the resistance fighters time to escape. And on top of all of that, he dies from overexerting himself with cowardice. Now, when Disney got the rights to Star Wars, they had one job to do. It was one simple job. It was the one thing that I wanted to see. The first thought that came to my mind, and that was to show Luke Skywalker pick up a lightsaber and kick someone's butt with it. Now, I know a lot of people wanted to see a super-powered Luke Skywalker who, I personally did not want to see Luke Skywalker bring down a Star Destroyer with his mind powers. I didn't want to see him block a Death Star laser with his lightsaber. And I didn't want to see him use mind control on 1,000 First Order troops and have them turn on their general. Turn on their general. I don't know. Actually, that sounds kind of cool. Maybe that could have been a cool scene. Could you imagine if Kylo Ren is like, "Get that man!" and a whole bunch of guys, march towards him and point their guns, and Luke just stands there, and then they just drop their guns and turn around and point them back at Kylo. Oh man, that could have been cool. Man, I should have been on the writer room for this movie. But anyway, I just wanted to see Luke Skywalker do a cool duel as Jedi freaking Master freaking Luke freaking Skywalker. That was Disney's one job that they had to do, and they blew it. And honestly, that is why so many people had such an emotional reaction to seeing Luke in Season 2 of The Mandalorian, and I also had a very emotional reaction. I thought that's some of the best television I've seen. And I thought The Mandalorian was kind of overrated, but at the same time, that scene was the best thing that Disney Star Wars has ever done. So yeah, thank goodness that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau had some creative freedom to bring Luke Skywalker back in a tasteful way. I don't know any Star Wars fans that spent their lives watching Luke Skywalker overcome adversity and achieve his full potential, only to turn into a hopeless, decrepit old man living as a coward alone in a rock in the middle of the ocean. Fifth, there were also some really cringy lines in this movie that have also been criticized to death by all the other YouTubers out there. But the worst, in my opinion, is when Rose prevents Finn from sacrificing himself to save the Resistance. She practically kills him by ramming her ship into his. What he's going to do is he's going to sacrifice himself by flying into a laser cannon that they're going to use, that the First Order is going to use to blow up the blast shields that are keeping the Resistance fighters safe. And so Finn is going to sacrifice himself by flying straight into there and blow him up. And, it could have been a really emotional moment, but out of nowhere, Rose decides to smash into his ship. And when Finn emerges bloodied and broken and bruised from the fiery wreck that she caused, he pulls her from the wreck and he asks her why she did it. And I can't remember exactly what she says, but she says something like, "We won't win by killing those we hate, but by saving those we love." Now, okay, this may have been a profound line in a different context. For example, let's pretend that the movie had Finn and Rose facing off against Kylo Ren, and Kylo Ren gets disabled, and Rose has a gun pointed on him, and she has a chance to kill Kylo Ren, but Finn is hanging on a ledge or something, and he's gonna fall, and Rose needs to decide whether to kill Kylo Ren or try and save Finn, and then instead of killing Kylo Ren, she goes and grabs Finn and lifts him up, and then I could see Finn being like, "Why would you do that?" She's like. And then she drops that line, and that would make sense. Yeah, I mean, that's a stupid example. That's a pretty, predictable example. I wouldn't recommend them doing that in the Star Wars movie, but I'm just saying, that line would make more sense in that context. But in almost comedic fashion, in this movie, in The Last Jedi, as soon as she says that, a massive explosion happens, and the blast shields explode, essentially sentencing the hundreds of Resistance fighters to death and subjecting the entire galaxy to the iron rule of the First Order. I can just imagine her dropping that line, and then the thing blows up and everyone dies, and then just hearing a wah, wah. I don't know why someone thought that was a profound line to throw in there, because it's also frustrating because Rose had a sister at the beginning of the movie that sacrifices her life to blow up a dreadnought to save the Resistance, and the fact that Rose decides to sacrifice the Resistance in order to save her celebrity crush is just like spits on the grave of Rose's sister, and I don't know. That just wasn't well thought out. Finally, the last thing I could go on for hours talking about this movie, but the last thing I'm just going to talk about is I really don't care about Kylo Ren and Rey. I liked both of them well enough in The Force Awakens, but for some reason they were just both really obnoxious to me in this film. As far as Kylo Ren goes, I was actually fascinated by the idea of him in the first movie, in The Force Awakens. And I mean, a lot of people complained that he was really childish because he would throw temper tantrums, but I actually thought it was interesting to see him, like, see a villain who was just trying so hard to be like Darth Vader and just idolize Darth Vader, but just couldn't because he could just never be as hardcore as Darth Vader. And now I thought that after The Force Awakens, after he got his butt kicked inexplicably by an untrained Rey, I thought that maybe that would change his character a little bit and he would become a little more sinister and hardcore. But instead, they decided to double down on his childish tantrums and just made him even more whiny. And they removed his mask, which made him look cool. At least that made him look cool in The Force Awakens. So now we just see him in all of his whiny glory, and I did not like that at all. And for me, Rey is just uninteresting. I like Daisy Ridley. She's a good actress, but her character just has no challenges, and there's no logical explanation for why she is perfect at using the Force. You know, I thought there would be a good explanation as to why she was able to beat up Kylo Ren without any training, or why she was able to fly the Millennium Falcon, or mind control stormtroopers without any prior experience with that whatsoever. But yeah, it turns out that the big twist as to who she is and why she's so capable of doing everything is because she's special. It's because she's amazing just the way she is. You know, the moral of the story for me is that you don't need any discipline. You don't need to listen to people who are wiser than you. You don't need to train. You don't need to dedicate yourself. You don't need to show humility. You don't need to master and overcome your demons because you're just perfect, just the way you are. And not only that, you don't need to work hard to be able to master the Force. You know, the Force just belongs to everybody. Everybody should get the Force equally. You know, every kid with a broomstick should be able to move broomsticks with their minds to their heart's content. And you know, shame on the Jedi for dedicating their lives to studying the Force. You know, shame on them for monopolizing, you know, this power that should be given freely to everybody, regardless of their personal worthiness. So yeah, whatever. I did not find that to be particularly inspiring. So yeah, again, I said I could go on for hours talking about this movie, but I'm going to leave it there. If you think I'm wrong, please leave as many hateful comments as you want in the comments section below, and I will catch you next time.